Hello, everybody. Say thank you so much for being part of our Cultivation Co-Op here at BCI. And it is an honor to have you as part of that and then learn from you and share with you. And as we do our best to walk worthy of the calling that God has upon our lives. And today you can see the title of what we're talking about. I've titled it From Doership to Leadership, but I'm sure you've heard this kind of idea. Some people have it that leaders are born. Well, of course, everybody's born, but what they mean is, boy, to be a leader, you have to be born with leadership. And I sort of agree with that, but sort of don't agree with that. And then others say that leadership is something that you can learn. And again, I agree with that, sort of. And so what do I mean? I mean this, that certainly leadership is a quality that we're designed with from birth. We have gifts and talents and skills and abilities and personality, and all that is given to us, by the Lord. But also, with those talents or gifts or abilities, if we don't work on them, they either lie dormant or they don't maturate in a way that they're sort of useful for the kingdom. So I think leadership is kind of a both and proposition. It's not either or, like either you're born with it or not. Well, if that was the case, then most of the people that we read about in Scripture that we know personally or that are even in our churches wouldn't stand a chance. And if we can be gifted with whatever and still be a leader, well, that might not work either. I'll use myself as an example. If I could have any job in a church, I would want to be the worship leader in a church, but I have a problem. I'm tone deaf. I can't carry a note in a bucket. I have no musical ability or talent. So that'd be like impossible for me. Although wishing, that's what I would wish for. And so there has to be some evidence in our lives of being born with those traits or characteristics of a leader. If we have that, then I think that we can learn, we can be coached, we can be mentored, we can actively participate in leadership in a way that advances our leadership. And so I want to bring you to a very famous passage, Exodus 18. Moses, at this point in time, has had the incredible fortune of having the hand of God upon him. And of course, he was the anointed and appointed leader of the Israelites and was utilized as the leader, as the human leader, I'll put it that way, to have this enslaved group of people be freed from the Egyptians. Well, you can read the story in Exodus, but in Exodus 18, he meets up with his father-in-law, Jethro. And bottom line, Jethro is observing Moses in his leadership. He sits on the throne, so to speak, and people form a line and they talk to him from sun up until sundown. So Jethro asks Moses about what's going on. Moses tells him a little bit of the story, and Jethro says, I'm paraphrasing, "This is not good. You're going to wear yourself out and you're going to wear your people out if you continue to lead in the manner that you're leading." Well, fortunately, Moses listened to his father-in-law, enacted what he said, and became a better leader as a result. So what was Jethro's advice? Quit doing what you're doing and I'll use the word faithful people, but put talented maybe people, put the right people in charge of thousands, in charge of hundreds, in charge of 50s, and in charge of 10s. So read that story, but I want to use that as the basis for you and I, no matter what our leadership capacities or capabilities are, that if we work on elevating our own leadership, then we're not going to wear out and our people are not going to wear out. Let me translate that a different way. We're going to live a fruitful and fulfilling life, and our people are going to live fruitful and fulfilling lives as well. So let's dive in a little bit to each. Well, all of us have limitations. Now, in our culture today, limitations is not like maybe a positive type word with, be all you can be, and all kinds of activities that we do to extend, beyond our limitations. And certainly we live in an affluent culture, and our limitations aren't, as well on the surface as many other cultures. However, we do have limitations. We have time limitations. We have energy limitations. And what I mean by that is not the power in our house, but my own personal energy. I have financial limits, physical limits, intellectual limits. We have proximity limits. We can't be everywhere at one time, so on and so forth. And so when Jethro was trying to help Moses out, he was trying to help Moses recognize his own limitations and structure and lead in a way where those limitations were placed upon other people and they could help carry the load. Now, if that's not leadership, I don't know what is. So again, thankfully, Moses listened to that, and what a great example. So each of us has limitations. So we can do one of two things that is kind of a paradox of leadership. And every leader either has faced this paradox or will face this paradox. And here's what it is. You can do more, or you can lead more. Interesting paradox, right? Every leader I know that goes from where they're at to the next level has to give up something that they enjoy doing so that they can elevate their leadership. That's happened to me. You might be thinking right now in your own mind, oh yes, I remember when I had to quit doing fill in the blank so that I could do fill in the blank. And that's what happened to Moses. I'm sure he felt probably pretty good, and he had a secure position with a whole lineup of people coming to talk to him. The end result of that, of course, is bad. So what a bottleneck, right? As we look at our own leadership, you will be faced with, maybe you're currently faced with, or you have been faced with this idea of I can either do more or I can lead more, but I can't continue under the same set of circumstances because either I'm going to wear out or my people are going to wear out. So let me use a more modern term. I'm going to burn out or I'm going to burn my people out. And so that's what we want to look at a little bit today. And so the first question is this: what criteria do we utilize in order to make a wise decision between those two, or even know if it's happening? Well, here's the first one that is a telltale sign you need to make a decision between doing more or leading more. Here's the first one: grumbling and complaining increases or comes from unusual places. I've had this happen in my very own ministry where a couple of people started coming to me that aren't known as complainers at all. They were part of the ministry. They always had solution side of things, and then they started bringing complaints to me. Two of them in particular that I sat down with and said, hey, help me understand what's going on. And what was happening is I was becoming a bottleneck and things were not running smoothly. Man, that was hard to hear. In other words, I was letting those people that were part of my ministry, I was letting them down. And so when grumbling, complaining is increasing or coming from unusual places, it's time to look in the mirror and double check. The second one is communication drops off. Here's what I mean by that. Either your communication drops off because it's just too hard, or, hey, I can tell them later, or, it's not that important, or I'm just too tired, I'll take care of it in the morning, where our own communication drops off. Or another way to recognize that is the right people were not informed ahead of time. In other words, somebody was surprised by either a decision that you made or something that you did. When communication drops off to that level, it's an indicator that you as a leader need to make a decision to either do more or lead more. And then the third one is that you recognize or become the bottleneck. Every decision has to be run by you. If somebody makes a decision on their own, even if it was the right decision, your ego maybe, this is tough to say, but please listen, your ego might be bruised a little bit, or even you might take offense of that. Those are all indicators that there's a bottleneck that is created by things having to be either run by you or decided by you. And again, I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm saying that's what Moses was doing. His father-in-law recognized it, and he had a quick and easy solution for Moses, which Moses implemented, and it appears that he did it right away. Now, how many of us could be humble enough and lay aside our pride enough to listen to our father-in-law of all people? Well, what a great example from this leader, Moses, who decided to lead more instead of do more. So now because we all do different things in ministry, I can't pretend to know what you should do if you decide to do more. That's kind of up to you. But I can tell you what to do, at least 3 things that occur to me, if you decide, when faced with this paradox of do more or lead more. If you choose to lead more, I can give you 3 hot tips. The first one is this: find faithful people and empower them to do the job that you're asking them to do. In other words, empower them to make the decisions. All leaders make decisions. You know what all managers do? They take decision-making to up the food chain. They don't decide. They gather information and have somebody else decide. Well, that person that decides is the leader. And so it's impossible for your leadership to get to the next level if you don't empower people, trusted people, faithful people, the right people to make decisions at a certain level. Please read Exodus 18, and it lays out perfectly what I'm talking about right there. Then the second thing, it's not just find people and empower them, it's to support them in their new role. For some of us, we'll have to think back to when some leadership was coming our direction in ministry. And some of us had the great fortune of being empowered to make the next decision. But that's kind of a gut-wrenching experience, because what if I make the wrong decision? So the responsibility shifts from the primary leader, i.e. Moses, to you, and now all of a sudden I have the responsibility for the decision. It really changes our decision-making kind of construct, and helps us verify maybe information in a different way, because now all of a sudden when I decide, then I'm responsible for the outcome. And that's what Moses did, but that's what good leaders do. And so to support somebody in their new role, the primary thing that you and I can do is support them in their decision-making. Now, let me give you this caution, because I've got the scar tissue from this one. You ask somebody to become a leader in an area, you even empower them to be a leader in an area, and then they make a bonehead decision, okay? When that happens, if you can live with the decision, then you have to back the person. And then teach them, train them, and help them understand why maybe a different decision would have been better, or it's okay to bring things up the food chain, so to speak, and get some counsel from either you or somebody else. Remember, Moses did thousands, hundreds, 50s, and 10s. And so the 10s would get counsel from the 50s would get counsel from the 100s would get counsel from the thousands, and of course the thousands would get counsel from Moses if needed or necessary. If somebody makes a decision that you can't live with, you have to change the decision. And that happens, and it can happen. So when that happens, it causes tension in the relationship. We as leaders need to be strong enough to absorb that tension, put it upon ourselves so that it frees up that leader to make another decision. So number one is find faithful people and empower them. Number two is to support them in their new role. And the third one, and this is absolutely vital, is you have to remain true to your calling. I know sometimes leaders, when we extend our leadership, I've worked with a few leaders that go, oh, okay, now I'm on easy street. And they kind of, quit working, or maybe not totally quit working, but they're reliant upon others to do all of the work. No. We work just as hard, just as faithfully. It's just that we're doing different work. And so my encouragement there is that you remain true to your calling and be faithful just as you're asking others to be faithful. If you do that, your leadership will elevate in accordance with what God needs for His kingdom and your role in it. So finally, accepting and fulfilling the role of leadership in any endeavor is a big deal. And so spiritual leadership is an even bigger deal. It's not only an honor and a privilege. I'm so honored to be part of the BCI staff, so honored to serve our pastors and church leaders. I mean, it's an honor I don't deserve, frankly. And I want to live up to the honor that you and BCI has bestowed upon me by doing the very best job that I can. But you are likewise in a role and responsibility of spiritual leadership. And so it's not just cultural leadership, but spiritual leadership adds a layer because we work for and are under shepherds of our Lord Jesus Christ. And at least for me, that adds a level of responsibility that needs to, not overwhelm, certainly, but that, the ante's pretty high because how well you do at your role in leadership, how well I do at my role of leadership, and every single leader within the BCI, within your church or whatever, has eternal consequences. It's not temporal consequences like in a business of increasing profits or something like that. They're eternal in nature. So with that in mind, I want to just say once again, we are here to resource you in the work that you're doing. We have several cohorts that are happening with children's and youth ministry. We have different events that are occurring. We even have scholarships to things like, prayer, coaching, for not only you personally, but for churches. So if you want to find out about any of those resources, please just contact myself, Tim, Ben, Pastor Todd over at First Family. We're here in your corner, and we want to help you be the best at fulfilling your role that you can possibly be.